We're going to continue our conversation that we began last week, what I call this little mini-series, Reflection on the Election. I shared last week with neither slide nor script a little bit of my experience as an election judge this week during early elections. I do want to remind you that the offer that I made last week, the challenge that I offered last week, still stands. We are still in need of election day clerks. Adria and I are looking for a few good clerks who will be able to take the registration and process the registration of all the voters who will be waiting until election day to cast their votes. We'll be at Capel Arts Center, which is a lovely place, and if you are interested in you live in Dallas County, though, is the only downside. If you live in Dallas County, you can serve with us. If you don't live in Dallas County, call your local party, call the local party, and they can place you if you're interested in serving. It is it's the gift that keeps on giving, let me tell you. Well, I'll begin with the words of George Orwell. In the time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Let's start a revolution, shall we? Let me give you a voting update of my experience this week. This is my second week as alternate judge in this small community. I do want to point out, in the old days, you know, the churches used to have these little pamphlets and brochures you can hand out. It's like, oh, here's the voting records of this guy, that guy, this candidate, that. Now it's all sophisticated. I recommend that you go to ivoterguide.com. It's actually the best one that I found, ivoterguide.com. And you'll see with each, you put your zip code in, and actually, it not only gives you your presidential candidate, your senatorial candidate, but it takes you down ballot as well to your congressional candidates as well in many instances. So, and it will give a little meter, okay, here's where conservative to liberal, to dud, fresh, rotten, whatever the case may be, whatever that meter says, but you can actually click on it and you actually can see their positions, different candidates' positions on various issues. I find it very, very helpful. ivoterguide.com. Just to let you know, although you may see articles online or may hear your news anchor tell you in serendipitous, stentorian tones of authority that voter fraud is not a problem in America, and it's not measurable, and it's not. It's both a problem and it is measurable. Heritage.org has an entire site dedicated to election fraud. This is the piece of the home page there, a sampling of recent election fraud case. This is it's not conclusive. It is a sampling. Comprehensive rather, a sampling of recent election fraud cases from across the United States. So you see, these are not single-digit issues. This is 1,298 cases of voter fraud, various different convictions, and other. So if you're curious to see what kind of, I actually was curious to see not only that there was voter fraud and that there had been an extraordinary number of convictions over the years. It's amazing that the news somebody can just write it or somebody can say it on TV and they can just lie to you without blinking, without thinking, and people believe it. But it is a problem. It's a measurable problem. And okay, it's not like 50% of our ballots are fraud, okay, but it's more than just a rounding error, especially those of you who remember certain elections are determined by a single state and triple digits, sometimes just double digits. 59, 359 can determine an entire national election votes. You may remember those cases, so I would recommend heritage.org to you. Now, I wanted to share, what is this, okay? These are, they're not the act because you can't record in the place, but these are representations of some of the people that have popped in to vote, okay, in the age of COVID. Here's your driver's license, please. Maybe. Sir, ma'am, maybe could you remove your glasses for a moment? Could you pull down your mask for a moment? And don't be surprised if somebody gets irate. Pull down my mask. It's COVID, right? I'm just trying to recognize you, right? This is a better obscuring of the face than some women in certain fundamentalist Muslim countries. Now, can you tell that of these 5 people, there are 2 celebrities there? No, of course you can't. You can't recognize them. I'll tell you, the 2 ladies on the end, on the top there, that's Diane Keaton, but you would never know it. And below her, in the reflective shades and the blue hat, that's Reese Witherspoon. Could you recognize her? No, you can't. Welcome to my world, okay? People coming into the election booth like this, okay? Let's talk a little bit about mail-in ballots. This is so fun because mail-in ballots are the new cool thing to do this year in the age of COVID. Everybody wants mail-in ballots, except when they don't. We have a ton of people who have come in who had mail-in ballots sent to them by the state of Texas, who did not request them, did not want to use them, and come into the voting polling area and say, I would like to vote a regular ballot. Well, it shows here that you have a ballot that has already been mailed to you. Do you happen to have that ballot? Because you can do a trade. Paper ballot for your mail-in ballot. Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to bring it in. I threw it away. Uh-oh. Well, nonetheless, we make a few phone calls. You can still vote, and that vote theoretically is canceled. Okay, but you go home. Oh, it's sitting at home. If it's sitting at home, you got to go home and bring it in. Then you trade it. So all those people who said, oh, voter suppression if you do not have mail-in, the people do not want them. They want to come in and vote. They don't want that. So it's just created more headache for the voter and for the clerks behind the desk, and certainly for the presiding judge of each polling location. What's particularly interesting this year, because we have the rules are that if somebody had a mail-in ballot sent to them, it will show up. When I have that driver's license, I take the driver's license, I put it in. Okay, it comes up. Oh, they've already had a mail-in ballot. Okay, we have to have that discussion. Well, we've had several people who are agreeing to go and who have voted, and on their way out say, oh, by the way, I also have a mail-in ballot that was sent to me. What should I do with it? That's not supposed to happen. That is not supposed to happen. What if they didn't open their mouth? What if they voted, my machine doesn't show that they had a mail-in ballot, and they send it in? Well, there's another safeguard because it may not be updated now, but you can trust that by November 3rd, if they mail in their ballot and we put the name in, it will kick it out because they will have already voted. Well, if it doesn't show in step 1, why should I believe the safeguard will be in place for step 2? By the way, all of our machines in our area, not just our polling area, but in our region, were down, okay, the other morning. So theoretically, somebody could have come in between the outage, they could have voted, it goes out, and during the outage, they could go and they could vote somewhere else, and whoop, they have 2 votes. Maybe, I don't know. Again, we have to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves, because the nonsense that the government is feeding us, and that certain parties who have an incentive to have all kinds of votes all the time, early and often, they're making problems. So do I think there are going to be lawsuits, multiple lawsuits around the country after November 3rd? Well, there already are multiple lawsuits before November 3rd. There are lawsuits in almost every one of the states right now regarding ballots. It's an interesting thing. If you thought Bush v. Gore in 2000 was an excitement with just one state in play, let's see what happens after November 3rd with 50 states in play. Well, I also wanted to let you know, well, it's not here in Dallas County, but in Harris County, Houston, Harris County, they have something very interesting. In fact, this was in the courts, and it was struck down, and a judge put it back in and said, oh, no, you have to have it. It's called drive-through voting. This is not the curbside voting that I was explaining to you, where we bring out the machines, somebody lets us know that a disability. No, this is for no special reason at all. If I want to drive, you have certain special locations that would have like a covered area. You could see it, like an awning or a covered area. And the car can drive in, and it's just drive-in voting. It's like a drive-through at McDonald's, okay? You make your order. Well, I'll take one president, and I'll take a couple of senators, a few Congress, okay? Not to go. I'll eat it here. And the worker, you see the worker out there, what's he supposed to do while he's waiting for you to vote? Maybe he'll wash your car while you're waiting. This is an extraordinary idea, okay? Whether you think it's as foolish, as disruptive, as ridiculous as I do, think about it. You can read about it. It's in the papers. Here's a little smattering of things that are going on around our country right now this week. These are just headlines that came off the internet this week regarding voter issues. A Virginia judge extends voter registration for 48 hours. Oh boy, extra time, extra problem. Supreme Court this week granted, it was 4-4, that's why we need Barrett. Supreme Court granted Pennsylvania voters an extra 3 days to mail in their ballots. In other words, their ballots don't have to arrive on November 3rd on Election Day. They can arrive on November 4th, November 5th, all the way up to November 6th, okay? If they have a postmark, it needs to be on Election Day. If they arrive without a postmark, doesn't matter. I'm expecting a bunch of ballots to come out of the back of a car on the 6th of November in Pennsylvania. Watch out. Pennsylvania Supreme Court also, okay, Pennsylvania again, they ruled the ballots can't be rejected based on mismatched signatures. So you have a signature on file, you send in a mail-in ballot because you want a mail-in ballot, okay? You don't have to compare the signature of the mail-in ballot with your voter registration. So how do we know that it's you who sent in that mail-in ballot? Short answer, we do not. Los Angeles ballot box was intentionally set on fire. I don't know how it was set on fire, and they said they're going to replace these ballots. I don't know how they'd know, but maybe it was caught in time. I don't know. 112 Washington ballots that's Washington State, ballots were stolen from mailboxes and discarded. Michigan Governor Whitmer vetoed a bill making it a felony to fill out ballot application without consent. See, I think to fill out ballot applications without consent, that should be a felony. She said, oh no, I veto that. Or to apply for multiple ballots. Why should any individual apply for multiple ballots, okay, if they don't have monkey business? Well, Governor Whitmer vetoed that bill. Some of the stuff going on. So buckle your seatbelts because we're in for a long and bumpy ride, I believe, on November 3rd. Unless something extraordinary happens and it is a devastating victory one side or the other, I think we're in, which we can pray for, but I think we're in for a bumpy ride. Let's get to the topic at hand. Jesus said to them, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and to God the things that are God's. We live in America. And we have a government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. So we are the government. This is a representative government. It is a constitutional republic. And so we have the responsibility to do our job, which is to vote. How is it possible that 40 million Christians did not vote in 2016? 40 million evangelical Christians did not vote in 2016, right? We dare not be passive because the other side is not passive. They're active. Paul said to render to all what is due them, tax to whom tax is due, my least favorite verse in the Bible, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. So in other words, as an American citizen, our job is not just, it's just like church. I do not expect you to be part, once you're a member here, I do not expect you to sit back and let the professionals do the work. The work of the church is just like in a family, is shared by all. And just like at Beth Sar Shalom, I expect each member to have skin in the game. So too, our Constitution indicates that each American is to have skin in the game. And so we must exercise our responsibility, our duty. It is a holy and sacred duty to fulfill our civic obligations. That's to be involved. Submit yourself to the Lord's sake to every human institution, 1 Peter 2:13. Whether to a king as the one in authority. Well, we have a human institution that is our government voting, okay? So submit yourself. Vote not because you love the candidates, right? How many elections have we gone through where we say, oh, it's the lesser of two evils, and I just have to hold my nose and vote for one? That's not for the Lord's sake. That's whining and complaining all the way. Now, you don't have to be happy, tra-la-la, in the voting booth, but submit yourself for the Lord's sake. It's a holy duty. Render to Caesar what is Caesar's. Well, I know you've been waiting for this. What sort of candidates should believers support? What sort of candidates should believers support? This will be two-parter, okay? So we're just going to get the ball rolling here today, and we'll finish the conversation next week, which is convenient because then comes election day, and there'll be no more time to talk about it. Then I'll be saying, what kind of candidates should believers have supported instead of what they should support? As Isaiah 20 says, it's not 21 through 31 verses. Woe to those who call good evil and evil good. That is a good reminder as we think about who we want to elect, up ballot and all the way down ballot. The Lord says, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. Well, we want a candidate who is pro-information. I want a candidate who is pro-information. Pro-information, not censorship. So a candidate and a party that is pro-information, not censorship. Now that is difficult today, but the Bible tells us, Romans 1:18, that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. So when you see candidates who will not give you a straight answer, or any answer at all, or tell you that the very virtue of asking the question, you don't deserve an answer. The Lord has something to say about that. They suppress the truth. Suppressing the truth is not a godly value. But we live in a world where the truth is suppressed all the time. It's suppressed. It's hardly expressed in its unvarnished form. It is twisted. It is manipulated. The mainstream and the social medias have a coordinated agenda. And that agenda is purposely designed to manipulate participants. In other words, viewers, readers. You are being manipulated by design because there is a coordinated agenda. And you see, each issue is artfully framed, thoughtfully, coordinatedly framed to incite emotion. Maybe good emotion, maybe bad emotion, either way, pheromones or whatever the hormones, they rush, they release, it's a hormonal rush that keeps us tuned in and logged on. So even the guys that you like, Like I watch a guy, at 7 o'clock when I can. I like him very much because I'm like, oh, the day has been so crazy. I need a shot of sanity. And so I'll turn on this fella who happens to be not before the guy who rhymes with Hannity. But, but even that show, it's designed to release a hormone. I'm calmed down. Somebody who's speaking with the voice of sanity. And issues are purposefully misrepresented. Some networks are worse than others. Some websites are worse than others. But there are no channels, there are no websites, there are no pages, there are no social media that are devoid of a slant, devoid of a bias, devoid of a point of view. So we must be aware of these things as we are consuming these so that we can thoughtfully analyze what we are consuming, what is being fed to us. Would you eat a meal today in 2020 that you didn't look at the caloric content, or you didn't look to see how much sodium was in it, or you didn't look to see if there was something you might be allergic to? Just as you analyze the food that you eat, the content of what you put in your body, we have to analyze the content that we consume with our eyes and our ears. But the issues are purposefully misrepresented, and information is alternately overemphasized or restricted, or in some cases, depending on what channel you're looking at, ignored entirely. We'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. So who am I talking about? Of course, I'm talking about the New York Times, I'm talking about the Washington Post, because remember, democracy dies in darkness. MSNBC, CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC. Talking about the big media, talking about Twitter, talking about YouTube, talking about Facebook, talking about Google. None of these guys are exempt from what I just discussed. They're all in the business of manipulating you and twisting what you see, misrepresenting what you see. Facebook loses if it loses eyeballs, it's the loser. So it needs you to come back. Even if you're upset that something that you think should be there isn't there, same thing with Twitter. ABC, NBC, NSM, MSNBC, all the other stuff, right? Okay. If you go to conservative news, okay, Google purposefully throttles. You can see the red of the conservative sites. Google purposely throttles the search results from conservative news sites. So even if you, knowing full well that you want something with a little bit of a slant, a little bit of bias, so you can actually get a full-orbed idea, the conservative news sites are harder to see. They come down far lower on the page, maybe even on the second page of your search terms. Now, speaking of Google, used to have a slogan, "Don't be evil." Now, apparently, they have changed their slogan, "Be evil." And they really are in the business of censoring things. But we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's just revisit this town hall issue, the dueling town halls. We had one guy getting a foot massage. Look at even the chair. Donald Trump, we're going to give you a hard stool and make you kind of stand sit. Old man Biden, you get a nice, comfy, well, he looks like he's sitting in the captain's chair of the Enterprise. So comfortable. Would you like a massage? Would you like a hot toddy? And Donald Trump, forget about it, right? Just a slant from one candidate to another, both network news stations. Interesting. Literally, all things being equal, you can see the bias. You can see the misrepresentation. You can see the slant. Another great example is, how many of you watched the debate, presidential debate this past week, right? Okay, I love to watch the presidential debate on C-SPAN. And then when the debate is over, I shut the TV off, or the iPad, I shut it off. I'm not looking for now. I used to watch the commentators, the talking heads, the panels, the blue ribbon panels, right? after and hear the analysis. And what I discovered is that no matter how the debate went, the Democrat candidate always was the winner, according to George Stephanopoulos. It wouldn't matter how good the Republican did in performance and how bad the Democrat, but according to George and his panel, the Democrat always wins. The Democrat always has the victory. It's extraordinary how that happens to every election cycle and every debate within every election cycle. You would think just by law of averages, at some point the Republican candidate would win, but not according to George Stephanopoulos and ABC News. And pick your anchor. I mean, they all give you the same result. Okay, so understand that, right? Their job is to tell you the victory that you just saw, you didn't see. Who are you going to believe, us or your own lying eyes and ears? The media consumed 2.5 years of our lives with the Mueller report and the Russia investigation. After 2.5 years and however many millions of dollars and how many headlines, how many hours, how many conversations on 24-hour news, on Facebook, on Twitter, on all of our Google, it consumed our nation, culminating in an impeachment. And quite interestingly, here we are, and you would think that if there was something that was so important to consume 3 years of a presidency, of an administration, nobody's mentioned it during this entire election season. It's like it never happened. But it's like a magician. They say, don't look over here where something's happening that's good. Look over here. Pay only attention to here. Don't look. The media are manipulating you. They are misrepresenting. And the candidates that play along, the candidates that do not, the candidates to whom the media serves as an adversary, that should tell you something. If a candidate is cozy with the media and the media never seems to have anything adversarial, for example, if a president has a 93% level of negative coverage from the news stations and from print journalism, that should tell you that something is not right here. But ultimately, they're not against that president. They're not against they're standing against you. They think you, as an American citizen, are stupid and a useful idiot to be manipulated by their clever machinations. Guy like Mr. Nadler, Jerry Nadler, weeks of Antifa violent protests in Portland. He said, Antifa's a myth. I thought he was on his own until I heard Vice President Biden say the same thing at the first debate, that Antifa is a myth. It's not a myth that our cities are being destroyed and burned down, that our shops are being looted and ransacked, that our police are being shot. That's not a myth. They're not mythical creatures that are tearing our cities down. Oh, and then, of course, the secret emails. We'll say more on that next week. I'm waiting for more information to come out. But how is it possible? How is it thinkable that the New York Post and again, doesn't matter if it's Trump, doesn't matter if it's Biden, doesn't matter if it's Santa Claus. If Santa Claus, they found secret laptop with secret emails indicating that there was some graft or some other monkey business or somebody's on the take, and Santa Claus is the big man, is the big guy. It's unthinkable that news could be censored, completely censored from Facebook, completely censored from Twitter, completely not carried by any news network. And why don't they carry this story? Well, ask NPR, which, by the way, remember, is National Public Radio. Our taxpayer dollars pay for NPR. Well, it's fake news. There's nothing there. I watched the interview that was unaired the aborted interview between President Trump and Leslie Stahl. And he asked, why don't you ask about the emails? Well, because the laptop can't be verified, President Trump says. Well, why can't it be verified? Leslie Stahl, remember, she's an award-winning journalist, Leslie Stahl, respected 60 Minutes. Laptop can't be verified. Why can't it be verified? Well, because it can't be verified. What do you mean it can't be verified? Well, it can't be verified. Why not? Because it can't be verified. Genius. Try journalism. She's forgotten what it is to have a sense of curiosity. But nope, there's nothing there. And let's hide our heads under the sand if we know that a tree has fallen in the forest and anybody hear it. If there is a scandal at our nation's highest level, but nobody covers it, did it really happen? The answer for the media and for one of our candidates, Vice President Biden, is we hope you think it never happened. If we don't talk about it, if we don't ask about it, if we're extraordinarily incurious about it, it never happened. But for a newspaper like this is not the Midnight Inquirer or something, National Enquirer, mine wants to know. This is not the Star. This is the New York Post, one of the oldest newspapers in America. And they are still banned from Twitter. Their account on Twitter, they still cannot upload a news story from the New York Post. Something smells rotten in Denmark. And when it comes to old Uncle Joe, you'd think that somebody would ask him a question. But no, famously, when this stuff came out, the reporter who was there, the press corps who was there, they asked him, what flavor of ice cream are you eating? How does it taste? Is it cold enough for you? These are the hard-hitting questions. And then this guy finishes his ice cream and he disappears into a basement for another week. Have you ever seen this kind of behavior in any national candidate before in your lives? This is unprecedented. It would seem that somebody would be curious about just the fact that he disappears for weeks at a time and we don't hear. It isn't campaign. But the media remain incurious, and they want you to remain incurious as well. So if you hate censorship, the Democratic Party isn't for you, because there is a coordination between the Democratic Party and the media, both mainstream and social. If you think that's not true, you're not paying attention. Let's move on. I want a candidate that is pro-free speech, because as Genesis 1 tells us, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. And he created man, Adam and Eve, with the ability to have free will. And with free will comes the articulation of that free will. That's part of being created in man's image. So free speech is the great gift. It was not given to us by our Constitution. It was not given to us by our founding fathers. It was not given to us by the state. It was given to us by our Creator and recognized in our Constitution. But today we do not have free speech because we have woke language. And if you do not think that if one candidate and one party takes power, that it's not going to get worse, you're mistaken. If you don't like adding pronouns to your vocabulary using them for singular or all kinds of other new made-up terms. If you're a Latino or Latina and you don't want to be Latinx, if you believe in saying men are men and women are women, if you believe in saying, if you feel that you need to say all lives matter, and all matter of other things that are politically incorrect to say today, it's not going to get better if one candidate wins. Okay? Woke is going to increase. Cancel culture is going to increase. The world will be saying, be careful, little mouth, what you say. And when the world dictates to you, when the government can dictate to you what you can and cannot say, the next step is to tell you what you can and cannot think. Okay, what is this, a presidential debate? You muted? I spoke more than 2 minutes, I know. Grab the handheld. All right. I don't have enough to get me here. I'll take this. Great. Words of President Reagan. I paid for this mic. Yeah. That's for the oldie people who remember that back. Now, where was I? About what you can and cannot say and being shut down. And that's a really great point. Can you imagine an organization, a nonpartisan commission, presidential commission for presidential debates, they make a decision to mute the president of the United States or the main opponent, the main candidate, one of the main candidates for the president? How dare they? Whether it's Vice President Biden or whether it's President Trump. Thank you. How dare they invoke a mute clause on the leader of the free world or the prospective, possible leader of the free world? Unacceptable. But if you believe in the First Amendment, the Democratic Party isn't for you. How about pro-Israel? That's something that's very important to me and important to God too. How do I know? Because His Word tells us, I will bless those who bless you. The one who curses you, I will curse. And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Psalm 122, 6-9. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. May peace be within your walls and prosperity within your palaces. For the sake of my brothers and my friends, I will now say, may peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your good. Doesn't that sound good? 2012, I was watching. Were you? Democratic Convention. They added Jerusalem and God to the platform. It had been unexplainably, they had both been excised from the Democratic Party platform. Jerusalem and God. So let's watch this and see how it unfolds as they propose to, embarrassing, try it again, reject it again. Jerusalem, God. A third time. Jerusalem, God. Were there a 2/3 majority? Absolutely not. But the gentleman said, well, we're going to consider that to be passed. And they included it back in the platform. But very clearly, the delegates were not in favor of including Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, or the Jerusalem, period, and God back in the Democratic Party platform. That's the issue of Israel. Let's talk about Israel's great foe, Iran. You will remember the peace agreement, or the contract, the agreement that Obama made with Iran, giving them however many hundreds of millions of dollars. And Donald Trump ended that agreement immediately because he knew that Iran represents an existential threat to Israel, our ally. You cannot placate our enemies. The ones who chant death to America are not the ones generally you will give hundreds of millions of dollars to on big, giant pallets. You will remember that every president from Clinton onward, it actually was our legislature back in the 90s voted on it, and it passed. It is official United States policy that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel and that our embassy was to be located in the capital of Israel, Jerusalem. President Clinton did not do it. President Bush Jr. did not do it. Obama most assuredly did not do it. But Donald Trump, he promised to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and to put facts on the ground, and indeed the embassy is moved to Jerusalem. Fact on the ground. You're looking for a pro-Israel candidate? Do not look to the Democratic Party. Look to Donald Trump. Let's not forget the Trump-Abraham Accords. The newest nation, Sudan, entered yesterday. Trump brokered peace and normalization between not only the UAE and Bahrain, yes, but Sudan. This reverses 1967's 3 no's from the Arab nations. No peace, no recognition, no negotiation. Now we have from Arab nations, and there's more to come, peace, recognition, negotiation, all 3 that everybody said was not possible. Most recently, failed presidential candidate and failed Secretary of State John Kerry said it's not possible, it's not going to happen. Well, boom, it happened. And who made it happen? The negotiator. If you love Israel, the Democratic Party isn't for you. Used to be. But for the past 20, 25 years, not anymore. The Democratic Party isn't for you. When I was a child, it was. When I was growing up, it was. But no more. Pro-life. This is perhaps the most important one. Because if you can tell where someone stands on the issue of life, you pretty much can tell where they're going to stand on every other issue. If they take the wrong stance regarding life, they're probably going to take stances that are wrong everywhere else. Pro-life. Where does God stand on the issue of pro-life? Thus says the Lord, your Redeemer, and the one who formed you from the womb. Psalm 22:10, upon you I was cast from birth. You have been my God from my mother's womb. Wait, just a clump of cells. You're just a clump of cells. But no. You have been my God from my mother's womb. As a human being. And the word of the Lord, Jeremiah 1:4-5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. Psalm 139:13-14. For you formed my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. As Moses said in Deuteronomy, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today. I set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. Choose life in order that you may live. This principle does not begin when you're old enough to read this passage. Choose life in order that you may live. You and your descendants, your posterity, those who are still yet to make a public appearance. Choose life. Well, again, here's a nice illustration of clumps of cells in many stages as a woman goes from conception to old age. It is scientifically correct to say that an individual human life begins at conception, says this Dr. Matthews Ross, professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. Trump is the most pro-life president ever. Yeah, you say that, but back it up. Okay, here we go. Ready? If he has a second term, he has promised to defund Planned Parenthood. If he has a second term, he promised to work toward passing the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act, and the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. All those pieces of legislation he promises to attempt to move forward. Now, it depends on Congress, depends on the Senate, depends on the House of Representatives. So it's not just about the president, it's about down ballot as well, our senators and our congressmen, because these bills have already been voted down, which we'll talk about momentarily. Donald Trump is the first president to personally speak at the March for Life. Donald Trump has signed executive order protecting babies born alive. Couldn't get the legislation passed, so he drafted an executive order protecting babies born alive. What does that mean? If an abortion goes bad and the baby winds up being born and still alive, Donald Trump issued an executive order that you can't kill that baby that has been born of a botched abortion, which was under Obama, was the law. Botched abortion, kill the baby, right? Don't let the doctor's inability to fulfill the abortion stand in the way of infanticide. Donald Trump ended funding for overseas abortions. Your taxpayer dollars shouldn't go to fund overseas abortions. Donald Trump nominated 3 pro-life Supreme Court judges and 218 federal judges. That is an extraordinary gift that will keep on giving for the next 30 years at least. Donald Trump overturned Obama's rule that forced states, including Texas, to fund Planned Parenthood. Donald Trump defended the United Nations Population Fund. Again, our taxpayer money going to the United Nations, and they were paying for abortions. Donald Trump forced health insurance companies to disclose if the health plans actually cover abortion. If you did not want to pay for a plan that covered abortion, you now do not have to. It's there in writing. Donald Trump protected religious groups and employers from providing abortifacients. Remember Little Sisters of the Poor, these nuns that were forced to buy contraceptive, forced to have plans that included the payment of contraceptives, abortifacients. Donald Trump said that health care providers are protected from discrimination for objecting to participation in abortion. No doctor, no nurse has to participate in abortion now, thanks to Donald Trump. Donald Trump reinstated the Protect Life rule that prohibited the use of family planning funds for abortion. Family planning is separate from abortions. One is life-giving, one is death-giving. Donald Trump ended taxpayer-funded research using aborted babies, i.e. all that fetal tissue stuff, right? And Donald Trump clarified that abortion is not a civil right. He did all this within a 3.5-year period of time. The most pro-life president ever. Let's take a look at the other side. Biden would be the most pro-choice president ever, and that's saying something considering that we just came from President Barack Obama, who holds that title right now. Biden would take that title from him. Vice President Biden has told us that he would push for legislation making Roe into law. Vice President Biden committed to the constitutional right to an abortion. Find that in the Constitution. Well, activist judges found it. Biden, the Democratic Party platform states very clearly, we would, quote, we would repeal the Hyde Amendment. Hyde Amendment is that which keeps your tax dollars from paying for abortions. If you object to having tax dollars paying for abortions, it provided a wall. Well, we would repeal the Hyde Amendment and protect and codify Roe v. Wade. Again, pushing for legislation, making Roe into law, so they never have to worry again if a Supreme Court judge is appointed that might rule against Roe. And would restore funding to Planned Parenthood and reverse Trump's pro-life actions. So all those reasons that Trump is the most pro-life, well, those would be reversed. Just like Trump reversed a ton of Obama's regulations, so too Biden would reverse Trump's, okay? From life to anti-life, to death. A president standing for life to a president standing for death. But don't get too excited, because I don't think Vice President Biden, if he becomes president, would last too long. In the event that he is no longer going to be able to serve as president, perhaps Kamala Harris would be a worse pro-abortion president. That title would then go from Obama to Biden to Harris. Kamala, is currently the most pro-abortion senator, as well as graded the most liberal senator in the Senate, which out-liberals Bernie Sanders, if you can imagine. Harris voted against the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. So, in other words, she voted against criminalizing infanticide. And the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Act. The legislation was children in the womb can feel pain at 20 weeks. She said, oh, no, we're not allowing that little technicality of the baby being able to feel pain to interfere with a woman's right to having an abortion. Harris submitted a letter on behalf of Planned Parenthood opposing Amy Barrett's confirmation last week, the week before. Harris, again last week, criticized Barrett for signing 2006 and 2013 pro-life newspaper ads. The list continues. Harris believes abortion is, quote, health care, and, quote, essential to women's equality. Really? Nothing says you're equal as a woman like having an abortion. Planned Parenthood has, of course, matter of record, been a large donor to Harris's Attorney General and senatorial campaigns, and I dare say probably her vice presidential campaign as well. I do not know. Last point, then Attorney General Kamala Harris collaborated with Planned Parenthood to produce legislation to target David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt. Do you remember that expose, the hidden camera, where we're selling fetal tissue? Right? Planned Parenthood selling fetal tissue, selling the tissue of aborted babies for scientific research so the doctor can buy a Lamborghini? She made sure that David Daleiden was prosecuted. And I'm not sure where the case stands right now, but it doesn't look good for David Daleiden. He's been tied up in court for years now. Pro-life believers for Biden. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of evangelicals who are literally standing up and saying, Biden is the choice. If you're a Christian, Biden is the choice for you. John Piper just wrote an article, an open letter this week. Well-respected pastor, writer, just wrote a letter this week saying that, well, when it comes to the sin of abortion or the sin of walking around in the skin of Donald Trump, an unrepentant sinner, as if somehow John Piper is privy to the thoughts and relationship of Donald Trump, whatever it may be, to his creator. He stands in judgment of Trump and says, those character flaws are negligible. Oh, is it Donald Trump's character as a boastful, proud braggart, or several million unborn babies during a period of administration dying? How do I weigh them? I'll vote for Biden, and I recommend you do so as well. For me, pro-life believers who vote for Biden are like those who voted against Lincoln in 1860. Because while they may have had a real moral problem with slavery is terrible, slavery. Well, they otherwise liked Democratic Party policies. And not to mention, old Abe rubbed them the wrong way. So because I don't like Abe Lincoln and because I like the other Democratic Party policies, I'll hold my nose against slavery and I'll vote for the pro-slavery party. Okay? I could have gone to Hitler. I really don't like his final solution for the Jews. I got a real moral problem with it, but he built the Autobahn, the trains run on time, and, well, Germany's pretty awesome. I'll vote for Hitler. Think about that. If you value the unborn, the Democratic Party isn't for you. Let's do one more. Pro-law enforcement. I want a candidate who is pro-law enforcement. As Romans 13 says, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same, for it's a minister of God for your good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for government, does not bear the sword for nothing. It is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. If there is a party that stands back and allows evil to go unpunished, or worse, for that candidate to fund bail for those who are burning down and destroying other people's property, instead of Vice President Biden, as the leader of the Democratic Party today, he could, with one word, he could shut down these riots and say, stop it. We won't stand for it. And get on the phone with the governors, with the mayors, Democratic mayors. Stop it. This will not stand. But he retreats to his basement. He does nothing. If the government does not act as a minister of God to punish evil, it is illegitimate. And he is an illegitimate candidate to lead a nation. If he does not bring wrath on the one who practices evil, you shouldn't vote for him. Governors are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. That's how it's supposed to go. Law and order. Law enforcement. But if you're going to allow this to go on, and our nation and our cities to be torn down, and our police to be undercut, well, perhaps President Biden will stand by the police and say, okay, well, sometimes excessive force, sometimes force is necessary. It's not excessive if it's necessary. It's necessary force if someone is coming at you and you've got to stop them. But let's hear what he has to say.
You have to teach people how to de-escalate circumstances. De-escalate. So instead of anybody coming at you and the first thing you do is shoot to kill, you shoot them in the leg. There's ways.
Shoot him in the leg. According to President Biden, by actually saying this, so a moving target, shoot him in the leg. President Biden has, number one, demonstrated that he's probably never held a gun in his life. He's never shot anything. Certainly never shot at anything that wasn't that was moving. But he is demanding now that our police are beyond police. Every cop now needs to be a gunslinger, Wyatt Earp, okay, and be able to hit a moving target while it's coming to you. A man who says something that foolish, something that unrealistic, something so unsupportive of our men and women in blue is a man who does not deserve the privilege of being in charge of our men in blue or of our nation or the commander-in-chief of our military. If you value law and order, the the Democratic Party isn't for you. Well, I've been pretty clear about where I stand, and I've tried to shine the light of the Scripture on it. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree with my analysis or my application. And you have every right to disagree with any one of my points that I have made. But I will insist that as a family of believers, as mishbucha, if we disagree, we will do so without being disagreeable. The world does not understand. Our nation right now is at absolute odds and is completely disunified. That's one of our national problems right now. But in this body of believers, and I'm speaking also to those of you who are going to write into me, we can disagree without being disagreeable. We are family, we are mishbucha, and we can have different opinions. So I'd love to be able to discuss, and I invite you guys to discuss any of these topics, any of the issues on your way home or over lunch after service today. But these are issues that we're wrestling with. All of us are wrestling with right now. And very few people are talking about them. So we are going to talk about them. We're going to wrestle with them as we make our decisions. Some of you may have already voted. Some of you may have not voted yet. And I'm going to do my very best to influence your vote. Absolutely. I believe it's my responsibility. I am rendering to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. So having said that, I want to again let you know we need clerks for election day. Come and see me if you live in Dallas County. Do we have announcements?